Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8.56, and of course we're playing as Germany this series, so let's continue this. I'm just letting the days march through here. Again, if this seems a little boring to you at any point, just skip forward a bit. Maybe you can look for the next event to pop up or something like that. And here we go. HD work. Ausbildungswischen. I'm messing that. Reichswehr Hermann Education Department. Basically, what I understand that to better train and develop industry in the Reich. It's just another, governmental Nazi type organization. Just using that as an excuse to pop up a little bit more, because you're not losing too. Level 10. Let's see if I'm pretty sure we should gain 2 more there and 1 more in Hamburg. Well, obviously it says that. And various tech things. And well, it still just says level 10, but I think it may. I know some of the other stuff will go higher. So maybe just won't display it. Yeah, it did go higher there. Okay, that's good. Battle Commander Recognition Advance. Okay, we've got that going, and if we did get that, there's that. So as you can see now, we are into producing some ships, still lots of stuff backlogged, and we're still doing a lot of more factories. Though as 38 rolls around, we're going to slow down the factories. My intention is to keep, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 8 factories just sort of ongoing in production. Just keep since they'll be cheap to build, just keep them going, keep expanding production, and then turning the rest over to actual production, and not the expansion of production. Oh, this is an interesting thing. All parts of life were being national socialized. It is something that there was no private sphere, if you will, in National Socialist Germany. Every bit of life is being put to the National Socialist program, and that includes art. They very much want to control art and very much want to control how people think, which, art is an element of it. Now, sometimes people cry in America, censorship, censorship. There's recently been a free play, but is sponsored by companies in New York. They're doing Julius Caesar. Well, reworking my understanding of Julius Caesar. And basically it's Trump. He's dressed like Trump. He looks like Trump. He has a Slavic wife like Trump. It's Trump, and he gets assassinated. Now, and people are, oh, well, you're boycotting it, and trust me, folks, boycotts work. Keep seeing a lot of people are, we don't like the right in America. We don't like boycotts. I'm against the idea of boycotts. Well, yeah, you keep doing that, and we've just shown that every bit of evidence that boycotts always work. But we don't want to do them, or we're not going to do them, so we're going to always lose. Oh, God, that makes me so upset. I mean, and I know we have, and I very much know that I have people on the left that watch, and if you don't like a company does something, boycott them. Absolutely. If you think they're supporting something that's Republican and against your principles, boycott them. Go for it if that's what if it's against what you believe. So now, with all of this going on, the Nazis wanted to, they were, shall we say, collecting art. And that's sort of euphemistic and correct at various times and elements. Hermann Goering and some of the others were actually, Hitler had a whole, and we will be seeing this, which we didn't see in my last German series because I made it after started the last German series. Not so much Hitler as a person, but Hitler had various setting up government officials and was going to create a big, huge art complex eventually in Linz, Austria. Or Linz, which then becomes part of the Greater Reich. That was going to be the world's great art collection. He wasn't trying to he did get personal stuff, but not a lot. Goering was known as a big sort of personal art collector who was snapping up artwork and as sort of collecting it that way. But by collecting it, I mean they were confiscating it from Jews, a lot of old stuff. They were, later on, once, we'll get into this, both private and public collections, from conquest, and the movie, The Monuments Men, talks very much about the American attempt to recover the stuff. So I know all of you are familiar with this. But they also collected a lot of deviant art or degenerate art, as they're saying it here. Initially to pull it out of the public eye because it's corrupting the public and all that stuff. Well, they set up in conjunction with their sort of high art in Munich celebrations every year. They set up a sort of, this is sort of the deviant art. Come and look at this weird deviant art that's sort of harmful. Well, it was so popular. It was, understanding, and maybe it's just crowd capacity size for the initial displays was maybe smaller, but it seemed to be more crowded and harder to get into than the official one. It became so popular, they eventually have it going on a tour around Germany as time goes on. 1937, I believe, is the first year that they held it, but they held it in 38 and 39. Kind of thing, this deviant art traveling exhibition that was popular, and people liked it too much. So because of the stuff, we're going to take the tour, but gain a little money because they were collecting money for the people viewing it and such. So we'll gain some money, lose a little bit of supplies. Get some dissent, but also get some popularity for showing up the art, dissent for suppressing art. So this gives you sort of an idea of some of the stuff. very much not to my taste in art. And there's, so like I was saying, there's a massive difference between the idea of government enforced censorship. Oh, and people are also in America claiming, because I don't know if Trump's going to get this done, but there's a push to defund all art by government support in America, and I'm 100% behind it. The national play. No, just defund all of that stuff. Let patrons, we have the Patreon system on the internet. Let patrons support the art. There are, on the right and on the left, there are billionaires, there are millionaires, and there are just people who are relatively well off that can contribute. There's so many people out there who can contribute to the type of art, whether it's plays or painting or whatever you want. There is plenty of stuff out there that can fund it. You don't need a single cent from the government. And this is, we're talking America. Now, if Denmark wants to support some traditional or non-traditional or whatever art for a national thing, they want to do it, that's fine. And I'll give you the caveat. Like most cabinet level people in America, and definitely president, they get an official an official portrait painted for them. That kind of stuff. If you're buying or commissioning artwork to go in a government building, not just pulling something off the shelves, but you want to commission something, great, for that government building. If you want to have like a national, maybe, theater in Washington, D.C., a single one, and you're doing official government plays, whether they're historic or modern or whatever, but they're put on by the government in power, but that's such a very limited, minor thing, yes. But so if you need art for a post office, okay, you hire some local guy to paint a mural in the post office. Now that mural better not, or somebody should get fired over it, better not be too party political, like Republicans suck, Democrats are great. No, it should just be, hey, use the post office, or hey, here's an American Vista, or something very, party partisan, neutral. If you want to pay, that in a government facility to a limited extent, I'm good with it. But all the rest of the money for the arts in America should be completely removed, because now, hey, if each state wants to do it, they can get it out of their own budget. Now, see, states in America are different than the federal government. Is basically states, they can't go bankrupt really, and they don't get to print their own money, so they have to balance their budgets. So where in the federal government, they don't have to balance their budget, so they can keep dumping more and more money into something. So if they want to balance their budgets and they still want to do it, they can do it. But I'm talking about the federal government should be 100% out of the art business in America. But that is not censorship. That's just going, hey, government isn't going to support it. So this is where this is, the difference, and people mistake things. So it gives you an idea of what the art looked like. And it's both interesting that they felt the Nazis felt the need to show the bad stuff, to go, this is the kind of stuff we shouldn't do, and then it gets so popular that they spread it around the country by having a moving display around, and huge crowds go to see this stuff to enjoy it. So I just find that sort of funny, So 4-engine bomber crew layouts have improved. Okay, that's here. Okay, good. And we still have a good part of 1937 to go, so... And yes, a lot of air technologies. And normally I am behind on some of these. It's just, you know, how much do you do? And yes, I know I've seen some people that will, now we're getting up to 97. We're going to drop this. Yeah, let's do this now. Not dramatically, but a bit. There we go. So that will increase our research. So I have looked at some other people's Let's Plays, and they early on just got all this, run this up, and do that. But we could use some. Where are the small destroyer crew? Okay, those will be a lot of our torpedo boat type crews, and we're going to use a lot of those. Spotting and command decision. That's way too earlier. Carrier crews, we don't have any carrier. We have one sort of in production, partly completed. Yeah, we'll do, because we do want commerce defense, and we also want unrestricted, but we're sort of ahead of time on those, so we'll do destroyer escort. That'll. So there we go. Now, of course, we're going to continue to expand the army and other forces, so I'll continue to make that up. But we've gotten back from that 50% rating. We're almost to 100%, and we can go over 110, obviously, but won't improve things. Just cushions for combat losses and continued expansion. And so yes, we'll continue, but we don't need to. But we see we're still, just like I say, in 37. And yep, we've got a lot of stuff that's going to expand, but I think we're doing well. And let's look at intelligence here. Okay, what we're going to do here is, I think, stop the American spy program. Focus on Britain for the moment to see what they can do. And then we can, once we build up a reserve again, we can see about expanding. Okay, twin engine airframe research has advanced. Good. Heavy bomber prototype has advanced. We're not going to, I don't think at least, be doing a lot of heavy bombers, but thought we should go through and we'll open these up. We do want to do a lot of these to help those. That's grayed out there. So and 1,000-pound bomb. There we go. And the 4th International Zurich, or Aviation Zurich, down here. International, there's the Zurich Airport, poster for it. Basically, it's a international air show. We're going to send our stuff there, which costs us a little bit, but see, we'll get gained in experience in industrial espionage. Looking at some of the other things. This is from a magazine article on it. You see some of the photos, some of the German bomber and fighter types. Now, of course, we're still calling these mail planes or whatever at the time, but yeah. And and this also helps a few other nations get a little, who also attended, bonuses as well. Inspector der SS Reitschulen, the SS or Rittschulen, the Ritter Corps, the SS Cavalry. That's Christian Weber, and there he is there walking behind Himmler at one of the writing establishments. Weber, like I say, was a very odious personality. He seems jovial and a good party guy, and I do believe he was, but he was also very much personally taking over Jewish homes, confiscating the property there in them, and doing some very bad things, basically stealing and dispossessing. Because you remember at this time period, and this is what I'm talking, in the 30s, they weren't, taking people off to death camps. But if they could, dispossess you of your property, they were doing various things like this. And he was involved in a lot of that personally and trumping up some of that stuff. So the cavalry exploitation gang no longer helps us. We've already got that. But we'll get some more officers, and we'll get a small order of battle. So we want to do that. Because like I say, if he wasn't a Nazi, he would have been a good, and he wasn't someone trying to steal stuff, he would have been a fun guy to be around. But otherwise, no. I mean, doing the evil, or doing the good bits doesn't mitigate your evil. So, and we will attach him to there. So we have just an SS headquarters, an SS cavalry unit, which is the big school. 9,000 is a bit large. This is a bit small. They also had a smaller satellite school up there, which is just a cavalry. If we ever get in desperate need, we can use those units. I'm not planning on, as standard, attaching them to divisions. Again, I know some of the min-maxers will want to do that, and that's perfectly fine. The German Grand Prix, of course, that's the Nürburgring, which is still in existence. It's changed over the years, but we're competing in it and hosting it, so little benefit to automotive research. Fuel, we're really sure. Well, we're doing good enough. Okay. No, thank you. And yes, these basic, not necessarily in such an emergency rush as the school went to war, but a lot of their personnel were, depending on, the latter stages of the war, 44 and on, and like these, SS schools of various types were just being sent out to fill in the losses in various SS divisions. Cavalrymen, there were SS cavalry units, though a lot of them were foreign, a lot of foreign general servicemen in them. But so they might not go to there. They might get pushed into more of a mechanized force or infantry forces. So all those personnel during the defeat era definitely get utilized. I've mostly been given events and added to them that cover the German collapse, and there's a lot of stuff since I've been working on Third Reich, since I stopped working on Third Reich events for Hearts of Iron 3 and working on 4, which 4 is mostly just converting over to the stuff. But I've got a really good book on entitled "The Last Year of the German Army," and it covers the German Army in the last year of basically what it be from April 44 to April 45 or whatever, right in there. And it talks a lot about the collapse of Germany, and there's a lot to do for events, converting of various schools to combat units and a lot of stuff like that. The way 4 works without this sort of on-map HQs and stuff, I probably wouldn't do this on-map. I would just have an event that would give some of the benefits, and then if you form the schools, then later like this and like Bad Tolz, if you're starting to lose enough territory and things, could be sort of cannibalized, reduce your leadership bonuses that they give, and convert them into combat units that would show up on the map. several reasons I haven't done them even for this is, I'll say the main reason is because to some degree I'm making this for me and my play style. I normally don't, and I don't know, and I've often been wondering is would you rather see me lose a war or win the war? Struggle through it and lose, or would that be, uninteresting to you once that starts happening? Or is it uninteresting once the game's won and it's just going to be another 10 episodes of cleaning up the end of stuff? I don't know whether you'd want to see me win or lose more. But in my play style is, if things go bad enough wrong, whether because of me or more recently been experienced it with Hearts of Iron 4, the AI or whatever, Japan loses badly and Italy loses badly, and so everything goes off the rails, so I just end up quitting, so I'm more of a type, if I'm not going to win, or whatever, I find it less fun, so I just quit and give up. Okay, lost that game, let's start a new one. It's partially that, and it's also partially it's harder to code those events, and because you have to set up conditions. Well, when do you convert a writing school to a combat unit? Just when manpower exhausts? Well, what if manpower exhausts and we control all of this? Well, maybe, but you're still like in massive fights on the edge, and you're still having to do the kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe you would convert the school at that point to a combat unit. With these on the map here now, and you get an uprising, say in the Netherlands or in Denmark, the reconnaissance unit, because I don't know if it has any frontage, might not be able to fight, but you could combine it to another unit or whatever and go up and fight some outbreak of partisans, or you can, because I do think it has a good suppression here, you can, suppression 5, you can move it north just to be better suppression, or like, oops, the British invade, let's send these various weak SA units and SS units as containment forces, because your panzer divisions are out fighting on the east or fighting somewhere else, and you've got to rush them over to the place, and these forces are maybe nowhere near enough to push back a solid naval invasion, but would be, like I say, enough to sort of slow down the advances. So do you, if you're scripting it to, like you notice, Bad Tolts is not on the map either. Where is Bad Tolts? It's around here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. This is where, because the leadership's out in this province. So Bad Tolts is here. And when I did it, I didn't code it, neither has the other people. But it's a major school. It's bigger than this Ritter school. And they did convert it to it and some of the other training formations of the SS-2. I forget, Nibelungen Division or something. One of the late war sort of scrapped together units. When do you convert it to a combat unit? And then how do you want to then script it so that it goes back to being a school if the emergency is over? And so sort of the conditions are harder to code for. So that's part of the reason why I haven't done it, just because it's a bit harder to do, because you got to take so many variables into account. And also part of it is starting at the beginning, if you will. Partially because this, to me, is somewhat interesting. We're doing various research and various production elements setting up, but we're also getting a lot of events when there's no otherwise combat action going on. We're having a lot of stuff going on, so we're starting at the beginning. We're playing through the setup. So cultural, political, and other sort of setup events are much more useful early on now. And get those done, and there's a lot of important things. I haven't even gotten all those done. Like we've talked, I haven't even really done the proper Summer Olympics in Berlin. So those other things are just sort of lower priorities. Now, this is what I'm sort of hoping, some of the stuff, at least the sort of victory-oriented stuff, I'll be seeing that some of the other sub-modders have been focusing on wartime stuff, and that should be good. That's sort of what I want to play. Again, it's no dislike of them. Like I say, I want to play and see how they've interpreted them and set them up. Well, we have all those coastal battleships, 4 of them to be exact. So we'll do that. Get those training. So those are just some of the considerations of what I do, and that's part of what I think you're interested in, is to some degree how I build my bonds and things. Okay, this goes again back to Christian Weber. This is his Knight of the Amazons. Didn't have very good. This is a brochure of it. A statue from this year's. So we can do it, lose some supplies, gain some popularity. See here, there we go, we gain some popularity, and such for an organization for the NSDP, or not do it, we'll do it. And there he is, Christian Weber, being the man of the stuff. I think this was for giving out prizes. You see the SS guys holding this tapestry of women being carried off by horses or something, or men riding horses. But yeah, that's him, and we lose some descent. There we go, that will help our descent. Go down to 1.2. Ah, okay. SS Cavalry Brigade. This Schutzstaffel Cavalry Brigade, often made of foreign troops from parts of the Balkans. Ah, okay. These SS units varied in quality and were of primary use to control partisans. Okay, we're going to activate the unit. This is happening a little earlier than normal because we've met the conditions, because I've changed the conditions to having forming the Ritter School. See, that's another benefit. Where I believe the original because I've changed some of the original files from Black Ice. I believe the original ones are tied to controlling Yugoslavia. Now, notice this activated the unit in the sense that we can make SS Cavalry in this sense. Now, this just takes our manpower up, and in my opinion would be a waste because cavalry aren't that good. But you can start producing them earlier. Now, there was a bunch of SS cavalry units. I forget, part of it was certain districts were sort of given over to the SS instead of the SA. When I was doing some of the research, just a few of them. And so they dominated. Maybe they were down in Munich or the rural areas or somewhere like that. That was, instead of SA Ritter Standards, they were SS Ritter Standards. They were sort of controlling that area. Now these were all part of the Allgemein or General SS, not the Waffen SS. And obviously they were tied into the Ritter Schule of theirs, and then Christian Weber as inspector of it. And basically they were doing the same things as the SA at the time. And so that was going on. Okay, air bases Northern Germany. Yes, we want those. We will get the manpower back eventually. We will lose the supplies and whatever, but we want all of that. Very much so to help with the naval air elements that I like so much. The bases in Northern Germany to help with that. Control the seas via the air, which will help keep our practicals down as well. And of course it covers up just where the we're gonna up here. Oh, build. Okay, so we're still building more in Western Germany. Okay, well, fine. We'll take them. I don't know if the manpower returning event happened too soon, or they just figure we still need to do more. They're cheap. I mean, it's costing us 1% of our ICs, so they're not free, but they're fast building and get up there. Maybe we can see them come onto the map. Okay, yeah, some of them are. Okay, Totenkopfverbände creation. Theodore Eike's. This event will start an event chain for pre-war buildup of SS-Totenkopfverbände and Totenkopf. This is the standard Black Ice event that I hated with a passion. The image that they used for it, primarily because they used some fantasy patch that was crude, looked nothing like a historical, the historical patches, you know, like some biker gang SS patch kind of thing, and I just hate that. So I made this a couple of variants with Theodore Eike. So it's their event, but my image. Yes, I can be picky like that, but most of the Black Ice event images are really good. I sort of like their sort of modernistic Totenkopf event images where they sort of use the death head and other stuff that they do well, and I'm happy with different styles. They don't all have to be my style, the way I make it. No, thank you, friends. But when it's that bad, I just can't stand it. And since modding is the thing I do, is make event images. Like I did the great bulk of them for Volwert's Panzers mod. And so since I do that, I just a few times have created it. And there may be a few instances that the other image gets used, but I've tried to switch it over to better ones. And some of the way I do that is simply name my file the same file name as theirs. So since my mod takes precedent over theirs, even though it's the same file name, they'll use my version of the image. And I try to do those kind of things to keep compatibility highest and to keep me from having to go in and mess with their files as little as possible. Okay, the STG, not going to try to pronounce that again. The research based on Tote takes over as head of it. He is a doctor of engineering, but it comes under part of his empire at this time. We can research or decide not to. It doesn't stop the further event chain. It's just, do we want to spend 1,000 supplies for some technical research? Yes. Again, all minor, really achieves nothing if we're not already researching. Box sport, it's just mostly informational. Yeah, entirely informational. Um, period. Boxing magazine ties in with some of the schmelling and other sorts of events with, you know, Joe Louis that will be happening now. I want to make sure we don't have any red. None of those pushed again the over. Yeah, and again, little events like that on their own do nothing. If you're researching it, it just makes the research, you know, 5%, 10% faster. And if there's a bunch of them, which in some cases there are a bunch of events, they stack up and together would do it. Helps mitigate it. Because it isn't a zero-sum game, meaning in real life you don't spend 5,000 hours and then you get X result. Sometimes it's a 500 hours, sometimes it's 5,000. It just varies and you get your results. And not everything is transferable, so that this. Okay, National SA Sports Competition in Berlin is held at the Olympic Stadium. There's a picture of it. Stadium. This was sort of the big national sports competition where the sort of regional champions, my understanding, go to compete. And it's all part of the SA militarization scheme and training. So we get infantry unit training gain 20. And so all of these things are going on all the time. You know, that's the yearly national one, but the various sporting days, sporting competitions, society is really being mobilized. So if you're a young man, this is all going on. They definitely reach out outside of the SA for some of the training elements. There's a lot of various pressure, perks, whatever, to get people into the SA. Because it just, partially before my research into all of this, I very much had what I would call the standard viewpoint is that after 1934 and the line of the long knives and the end of Rome is in charge of the SA sort of go away as any real force within Nazi Germany. Wrong. It is still a major force. Yeah, at this stage, I think it's still technically larger than the Army in 37. Eventually, like by 39, definitely the Army's getting bigger. Well, or the idea that active SA members versus inactive in the sense that they're SA members, but they're now in the Army. The Army is larger than that. Okay, this is the Brunswick Junkers School. So this is the Black Ice event. Again, I've sort of remade the image there. A lot of stuff in Brunswick really pops up, including industrial capacity levels there. The Horthy Cup. One of the actual screenshot from a movie of the water polo. He was Admiral Horthy of Hungary. Was a big water polo enthusiast, and there's a, you know, just like Olympic pin type badge. It's no special badge, but just from this year's Horthy Cup and the nations who played it. So yes, that goes on. There is sort of an event for Hungary, which does get a little bonus for things. So we are now in the red there. Uh-oh, I think that's dealing with the okay. We don't want that to grow bigger. And with the SS school, helps our leadership a bit. And we, like I say, we can research that. And we'll do that. Okay, we could use the money since we lost the British contract. Nationalist China. We would give them money for crude oil. No, thank you. How is nationalist China? Because aren't they at war with... Yeah, war with Japan. No, it doesn't look like Japan's made much of a dent in it. And this narrow front sort of makes it hard for them to... Oh, well, they've taken some territory here, it looks like, so... Japan's not yet in the Axis. Heavy armor designs. Well, good. Yes, we can construct heavy armor, but we're not going to do so at this moment. 3-man turret. Ooh, this is the big thing. I sort of follow some of the, let's see, we got a bonus already going for the SSHQ. Follow armor designs and thoughts on it. I think the 3-man turret is the best possible turret setup you can have for a tank. The new, what is it, Armata is how you pronounce it, the Russian tank that has a no-man turret. And there's been, you can go back to automated guns of like the AMX-13, which had 2 revolving magazines for it. That basically the turret, people were down in the hole in the turret where the Armata puts some sort of 3 all beside each other in a nicely armored tub. Really good. That part's good. The thought is that the entirely automated turret is a couple of things. One, if you're not well maintained mechanical systems break, and without good training levels, we've talked about earlier, at least I have, about the training capabilities of a lot of Arab armies that give a lot of high-tech equipment, and they don't have widespread good training and a good sense of maintenance for a lot of the stuff, so that they'll break on that way. Now, I think the current Russians will maintain their tanks well enough, but also battle damage or just campaign damage can damage a turret that's so automated that will which would otherwise not be a knockout of a tank, could knock them out. Most autoloaders aren't that fast, and they're definitely not designed to change ammunition, withdraw around and switch to a different type. And they're, generally speaking, well-trained manned 3-man turrets are faster than most modern autoloaders. I say most, because obviously you can have like those anti-aircraft gun turrets that are, fully automatic. They're, and you could design something theoretically like that for a main gun thing. But I'm definitely in a promoter of a man turret and having a loader, having the human there that operates, maintains the machinery. Because even if you look at like the Panzerhaubitze 2000 that the Germans use, it's a really good system, and it's semi-automatic in that it's set up to automatically load the round, but the human loads the powder charges in behind it. And they do that to be able to do the time on target, to have up to 5 rounds from one gun to land on the target all simultaneously. And they need the fast loading element of it, and the 155 millimeter rounds are big and heavy. But it can all be done manually if the machinery breaks down. You can load the gun in a setup, and it's made in such a way that it can be done manually. So that if and like I've seen a lot of photos from Afghanistan, they're using those things as sort of set-piece artillery in a base. And a lot of times I see they have the lanyard way outside, so there's nobody in the gun when they're firing the damn things. I don't quite understand exactly why they do that, but I don't know whether it's a safety or other sort of issues. But so if you're using that and setting up and more slowly loading and shooting, you can do so. And so automation should be something that improves the situation, but you need somebody there in a combat environment to stand over it to make sure it works. Now, in the time period we're talking about, we don't have the ability for automatic loaders, but compared to the one-man turrets or the two-man turrets of like the Czech tanks, were sort of mostly two-man turret vehicles set up to be four men, which sort of the design setup, instead of 5. You can go to 4 like we do in the modern sense, because once you get, you no longer think you need a bow machine gun, and you no longer think you need a human operating the radio, or specifically tuning in and managing radio operations. You can go down to a 4-man situation, but definitely the 3-man turret, and that's really what. Because you can also look at some of the British designs, though they were trying to do more of that stuff, but really the 3-man turret is where it's at, and that's what Germany really pushed early on and widespread manner. So that really helps all of the designs. Because you need somebody to keep situational awareness. Where are your friendly tanks? Okay, we've reached land power status. Good. Where are your friendly tanks? Even whether you're the platoon commander or you're just the most junior guy in the tank platoon, you just need to know, where you're supposed to be in the formation of your friendly tanks are, within your own platoon. Not just other friendly units, but where you are. Are you following along? Are you keeping up? Are you doing that stuff? And then spotting the enemy. The gunner can do a great job looking through his sights and setting up on the enemy, and maybe even swiveling the turret around, because especially in these early days, the commander may or may not have good optics. But even if you do have good optics and have binoculars, you're not getting full situational awareness. So if you're being a good gunner, you may be trying to zoom in on targets, but you're not getting a full picture. So you have your, the trains run on time, good, for Italy. So you need somebody trying to get the full picture. The gunner concentrates on his job and the loader on his. Okay. We will no longer receive. Okay, fine. And the Great Hong Kong Typhoon on the 2nd of September 1937, an unnamed typhoon hit Hong Kong. It affected Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. 11,000 people died in Hong Kong, 21 in Macau. Yep, okay. We'll sell a bunch of supplies to the U.S. Now, if somebody has similar sorts of storms hitting Germany or other parts of stuff like that, and they want to provide me with historical information and photographs of stuff like that. There's one other mod talked about some storms hitting northwest Germany, and a German mod that I looked at, and then I tried to research it for myself, because I'm not just going to it's a combination of things. One, I'm not going to go steal somebody else's work and throw it in my mod, even if I'm recoding it myself. I may learn about an event from a mod, a real historical event, but I'm going to do my own work. Okay, so I'm going to go in, research it, understand as best I can how big was, because that's the typhoon going on, how disruptive the event may happen, and do that, and then make my own event on it. But it's also the idea that I want to make sure that if I say an event like a typhoon happened, that it really did happen. So I want to just get confirmation of that. So it's combinations. I'm not going to steal other people's work. And now, like I say, we're all working from the same playbook, whether it's Black Ice or some of the other modders or somebody else. We're all working from history. And so one of us is going to be the first one to find out about something that's sort of obscure. But that doesn't mean that the other people can't make events on it. And especially now, we, generally speaking, have a gentleman's agreement to not step on each other's toes once somebody sort of makes an event on something. Let them do that. Now, if you really think you can do it better, or you need to make it part of a greater event chain or something else, fine. And we normally talk about that to some degree back and forth. And so, because we're all trying to work together within the Black Ice community here, and it's working out great. But just say, because now I'm thinking in Hearts of Iron 4 terms, if somebody comes up with something and I go, oh, okay, yeah, now I've learned about it, now let me go research it. And so it's not stealing the stuff, because they didn't, it's not like a fantasy realm or something that's an idea that they created on their own. It's working from something from history. So, that's just the way I work. And so, but if you've got a similar thing, and I found newspaper articles, and this is stuff that I got in my research, in Romania during the German buildup getting ready for Barbarossa, there was a significant earthquake that happened in Romania, and there's newspaper articles about it where the German units that were locally there in Romania did a lot of earthquake relief work. And so I incorporated that event, U.S. newspaper headline on it, some photos from, of collapsed buildings from it, and all that as part of my German Romania event chain. Now, again, I started that out. And so if somebody else is going to want to do that, they better look up the stuff themselves, find the original sources, make their own event images, and do their own thing. But it's all working from history. So if another thing, I've been collecting a few images from the Vesuvius eruption that happened in 44 down, that Pompeii, and that covered Pompeii long before, the same volcano that happened during, like I say, it was 44, yeah, no, 43, yeah. I think it was 44, but either 44 or 43. But it happened during the American campaign in Italy, and it affected things. So I have not coded that in, and then that has to be sort of coded to maybe happen when the Americans are there, but also happen when the Americans aren't there, and have the volcanic eruption of Vesuvius and how that affects in Italy, in that region, lower infrastructure or whatever it might be. So I'm interested in natural disasters. If any of you are know of it, the minimum is, hey, X earthquake happened, okay. But what's best is, if you want to help out, is links to photos, or newspaper reports and other things like that. And especially, I love, even if it's in foreign languages, love the headlines and basic text from original, like a photograph of the newspaper stuff. So if you ever want to contribute something like that, and something that is not man-made, so there's not a decision, do I want to have an earthquake happen to me? No, it's just something that's going to happen. And so if you have some of that information, I'd love to get it. Now, of course, Germany is the focus of this series in Third Reich events, but I'm happy with something happening in South America or happening in Asia or wherever, because whether it gets included soon, as in the next version of Third Reich events for Hearts of Iron 4, or it waits for 3 years because I finally get around to an American mod, it may, you know, and if something that happens in America, it may wait, but I really sort of like to collect these kinds of things. Okay, submarine crew berthing advance. Don't know how much advance there was for submarine crew berthing at the time, but okay. Definitely whole advance, definitely. Some of the others, but bunks, a lot of it was just any free space we can cram a person into that they can sort of kind of maybe think about sleeping in. We'll do that. At least that's my impression of submarine berthing. Okay, we've got all of these that are for 37. Yeah, let's do that. And more. 102 for Northern Germany. Yeah, I don't want to make any of my mods to make the country easy to play. So whether there was a massive storm, typhoon, hurricane, whatever you want to call it, tornado, and do damage or whatever, love to have that happen. Earthquakes, volcanoes. Don't know if we give them money for rare materials. Okay, we've got lots of money. Yes. So, you know, or other natural disasters, floods. Obviously, floods are often associated with storms, but not always. Okay, the South Schutz, the SS, similar to the SS in Switzerland. This is coming off the National Front. This was the elite strong arm element of the earlier Harsh troops, and I don't know if Sal is a German word or if it's just a Germanified French word of like saloon or salon. You know, the old Sals of French society, but that's sort of their armband. And at this time, because of the uniform bands, they're definitely, you can see all the full cross Swiss flags that sort of look Danish. That's one of their rallies. So you can figure that's all those heads. There's lots of people at this rally for the National Front here. That it's small in the sense that it's you know, 5-10% of the population, but 5-10% of the population is still a lot of people. That doesn't get you winning, and they only had one guy who ever won any seat, and he held onto the seat through several elections. But it doesn't necessarily get you, you know, winning elections, but it's a significant force that can be disruptive. So they'd mostly just, you know, wear a not uniform but similar clothes and then put on the armband for their stuff. So that's sort of their elite room protection. Okay, Askari veterans. Okay, this is sort of where you sort of really start to pay for if you want cores in Tanganyika. Talked about this in the earlier stuff, so I won't go into it too much. This is sort of the big payment of money and supplies. If you start paying the pensions, at least until 1940 through peace, you will be paying the yearly pensions, which I think are down at like at 20 money. But this is sort of all the back pay, or you can decide that you're not going to give money to subhumans. But you only get to do this is if you support the DKKR, the Tanganyikan Veteran Society, basically the African Adventure Society. And here's Die Front, just the newspaper for the National Front. I just stuck a photo of the image of the badge on it. So this is their version of the internet back then, and that they're promoting their ideas through smaller papers. Okay. Luftkriegsschulen. Okay. Formation. Actually, I'm not used to this, so I'm going to read this. The formation of the German air arm was openly announced in February 1935 with Hermann Goering as Reich Minister of Aviation and its Commander-in-Chief, in blatant defiance of the Versailles Treaty. The Versailles Treaty was repudiated in stages. Eventually, I found that towards the end that, this is again some of my research that's showing up more in Hearts of Iron 4. I didn't know this, maybe you knew this, but Czechoslovakia got access to 2 German ports, in Stettin, I believe, and maybe Hamburg or somewhere like this, that they had, and they only really used one of them. Maybe it's Hamburg, through the sort of ports and use of the waterways, the river system, to bring in barge system, to bring in bring export and import through Germany without any German controls, in the sense that they would, this barge is under Czech flag, so it goes, and so you don't get to inspect it, or this sealed train car is sealed and you don't get to inspect it, and you don't get to do any taxes on it or regulations on it or whatever else. This was Czechoslovakia's ability to trade with the outside world, and so they had certain rights to it, had certain foreign inspectorship controls over some of these river systems in this. And I forget when, 38, 39 or something, they ended that as an official policy. They still let Czechoslovakia trade, or because this was before Czechoslovakia, so maybe it was 37. I don't know. It was at some point around. Czechoslovakia still existed, but they reputed that of control of the waterways. So, which I found interesting. I know I've deviated from reading this, but just the point is that it wasn't one day there's the Versailles Treaty and the next day Germany announced it null and void. It was over stages as time went on. Okay, the intended growth of the Luftwaffe to fulfill its role in coming conflicts requires the education and training of capable cadets to become Luftwaffe officers. Up to 1945, 13 Luftkriegsschulen air war schools were set up to provide adequate numbers of officers for the Luftwaffe. In April 1936, these cadet schools, Dresden, Berlin, and close by Wieder, went operational. Further institutions were established in 37, 39, 40, 44. Initial personnel for the schools came partially from the Naval Academy Merwick. Okay, interesting. The 6-month curricula foresaw for officers, cadets, aviation training, tactics, leadership skills. Only after completing the Luftkriegsschulen, an officer candidate was eligible to join any of the dedicated fighter, bomber, transport, night fighter, naval, or reconnaissance units for further training. Airborne flying training in the schools ended in October 44 due to fuel shortages. From March 1945, aircrew cadets were retrained as paratroopers for ground operations, which had high casualties. Okay, a couple of interesting facts. A lot of the training, my understanding, almost most of the basic flight control training, not sure exactly what aircraft those are, they're single engine something or other, was done in the the Ju-52s, the Junkers, the transport planes, because they were dual controlled, and the Germans never really had many dedicated training aircraft, so they were using 3-engine aircraft, using a lot of fuel, and you can't do anything else with them while you're training. You can't fly supplies, you can't drop paratroopers, you can't do whatever else. So their training was sort of bogged down as part of this, and I understand from some of the articles or books I've read that losses in the sort of the Norway and Denmark campaigns put a bit of a disruption to the training. And definitely the Crete losses exacerbated that in the losses of aircraft there, and very much the Stalingrad losses, because they were flying and losing a lot of transport aircraft that really disrupted, and especially by the time the Stalingrad losses were happening, really meant that training could not go on, and so Germany really fell short in the lack of setting up a dedicated training. The best training systems set up during the war were in the U.S. I say the best, not necessarily, and I don't know, the most qualified pilots once they're done. I'm talking about efficiently producing in a factory setting, in an industrialized setting of training of pilots. The U.S. did the best of that, and as you can look at from whether fighter pilots or transport pilots, they did a good enough job. Again, I'm not going to say that like American pilots are better than British pilots or anything like that. It's like fighter pilots or training schedule, but they did it good enough that they were on a quality level, and they did it in such large numbers. They're sort of the one nation that didn't, because of that stuff, didn't have a bottleneck of pilot training, where a lot of the I think you can look at the later stages in Japan. They had fighter planes, but they didn't have pilots for them, and now a lot of that does come down to the fuel situation that we just mentioned here for Japan and for Germany. But for like the kamikaze guys that flew in, often they had less than 2 or 3 hours flight time, and most of their training was done on the ground and sort of simulated stuff. And since they were by that point, obviously one flight and dead, they didn't want to spend too much time on them, but they were still able to produce aircraft, and both nations were able to produce aircraft, but they had real troubles producing pilots. And one way they can see this so clearly, even for the Americans more so than very much so for the Germans, but also for like for the British, was because American bomber missions would have so many missions and then they go home. What is it, 50 missions? You fly 50 missions, you live, you go home. Your war is done. Now that doesn't mean that you're out of the Army Air Force. You're back home training new pilots. You're doing something else, but you're no longer having to face any combat. Where I don't know if there was any sort of idea of flying enough missions for British bomber pilots or fighter pilots. Now, of course, Britain were flying them at night, so it was a lot less casualties. Germany, there was none of that stuff, and it was you had to be basically written off mentally medically to stop flying. Meaning enough combat fatigue, post-traumatic stress disorder, for you to stop flying. So they were going to fly. Germany was going to fly you until you were dead. And so the Americans, they didn't need to do that. They can go, oh, hey, yeah, we've got enough pilots. We got enough pilots to man all the aircraft we're building. So yeah, you get done with your missions. Now, of course, very few crews made it through 50 missions. So it's not like, everybody gets to go home. But it's still, it's a defined idea and tells you that they're making enough pilots. And that's just sort of interesting thing. So we can set these up. We'll get a bunch of tech gain, 1,000 officers, which will help us out. Gas supplies, and may lead to other schools or other things. So yes, we're going to do that. That's a smart thing to do. And that jumps us from 99 to 101. No. Small ship engines, advanced, good. Yeah, which is grayed out. Oh, we'll do damage control systems. I thought this was fascinating. SS Berghaus in Bayerischzell. And you can see it there. It's a largest building, looks like 3 stories. You can see sort of the front there along the cliff overhanging it. They're standing up in the rails. And those are clouds down in the valley, just to give you sort of the height. And there's the pool for it. And there's the inside. The SS needs a holiday home in the mountains to get away from stress of their work dealing with the enemies of the state will cause a lot of stress. So this was around this time this house was purchased. Sort of make you do this, but I just thought it was fascinating that the SS bought this house, and basically it just functioned as a sort of a schedulable holiday resort for the SS men. Just various interesting stray facts going on. I think the building still exists, but that's what it looked like then and who used it. To the best of my knowledge, no other nefarious purpose for it other than just as a holiday. Okay, this came across here as a training manual, like throwing grenades and other sort of combat training. Showed some of the pictures from it that the SA were undergoing at this time. These are guys out in the field with packs and rifles. These are guys in the fields with rifles on the ground there throwing grenades. This is no longer the street toughs, the street thugs battling the communists in street brawls. The SA is no longer anything like that at this time. And this just sort of shows you how the SA is been very much shifted through. This is nutrition and other sort of special training exercises and march hygiene, all this stuff. But this is what's some of the manuals that they were creating for what the SA was. So gain some combat medicine and first aid there, and lose some supplies printing the manuals, going through the exercise. But it shows you that this is the SA has very much changed its focus. And this again just is, I'm trying to correct the record here, how the SA changed. The SA's role in what Nazi Germany was doing. Okay, well, we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos. Please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.